This video is sponsored by Squarespace, an easily customizable website platform for hosting portfolios, storefronts, and more. Designing characters takes a lot of brain mileage. It's actually a miracle I'm able to do it. There's so many things to think about, and it's super easy not to execute your character designs according to the vision you have in your head. So let's talk about some things that may be holding you back while walking through my character design process. Now, this sounds so stupid and obvious, but you need to have a concrete idea of your character first. Revolutionary, I know. Everyone has some semblance of an idea when they design characters, but I think that my design started improving a lot when I put a slight bit more time and effort into the ideas phase. Keeping the ideas stuck in your head or kept purely to visuals will help you to a certain extent, but it's important to write down the purpose of the character, the setting they exist in, and their personality. All those finer details and more. They need to be written out, even if it's just a few little dot points. So why do I insist on this? Well, writing out my ideas helps me work out any clashes and also helps direct me when coming up with new ideas to add on. One criminally underused source of ideas are the ideas of your friends, so I called up this random furry I know to help me come up with ideas for a character I'm designing today, who is a 3DS Skajinka. So, considering like the build of the 3DS, what kind of like outfit?
I feel like the 3DS would be a little bit of a fashionista, just because they had so many different models.
Oh, true. And like the different themes?
So I had a Sonic the Hedgehog theme.
If the 3DS was a skater, what do you think they would skate, based on your advanced knowledge?
My advanced knowledge. I think they're gonna be rocking something like normal skates, like the four-wheelers. I don't know what you call them.
So now that I've had a semi-productive conversation about who this character will be, let's move on to the sketching stage where I'll be implementing my next tip. Shape motifs are a super awesome element of character design that's super easy to implement. You probably already know the deal. Sharper shapes for evil characters, rounder shapes for friendly guys. I think one of the things that are most often forgotten about using shape language is that it's got to affect the anatomy and the features of the character somehow. This character has sharp hair for a more antagonistic look, but I drew them on a round squarish body, which doesn't really match the mean personality that I want to give this character. I added some shape motifs, made everything sharper, and it looks better already. For bonus points, you can also try changing up the proportions of the character. In my process, I try to consider shape language as a tool, rather than a strict rule which has to be followed. Take this evil character. Dude is looking way too sharp, and yeah, he's kinda evil, but I think he'd look a lot better if he was designed in conjunction with some other things like color, posing/expression, or proportions like I mentioned earlier. In this stage of my design process, I'm sketching out a base for the character thumbnail, starting off with extremely basic anatomy. I make a bunch of iterations, sort of as a warm-up, but also to explore different options. I wanted to use the rounded square shape exhibited in a 3DS console that I was referencing. This will be helpful in communicating how playful the character is, but also how adventurous and brave they are, with a more sturdy frame. I think that shorter legs appear on more calm, sturdy, and lazy characters, while longer legs are better to communicate grace and also energy, like they're just gonna get up and run away. But I think that these rules about what shapes make a character feel a certain way aren't set in stone, and you're allowed to make them up through your own observations. That leg thing, it's between me and me, but that's what my design style requires, so I'll keep that in my toolbox. Super boring base at the ready, and with shape motif in mind, let's move on to my next morsel of advice and my next stage of the design process. Thumbnail! Please, if there is one thing that you take from this video, remember to thumbnail your character designs first. So, what is a thumbnail in this context? Well, it's a little messy version of your character concept, which you color and develop into various iterations. This is so insanely helpful when I design characters because it means I don't have to commit too strongly to the first design that my brain comes up with. Okay, so here we have our final two designs. So the first one, what we had was the base, and then from that we just added some features, some ideas, just got sort of everything out onto the base, and we didn't really have an idea for colors. We just did whatever with the colors and it was a bit random. Then we duplicated it and made a few different variations, which I'll show you guys. So in these other ones, we experimented a little bit more with the colors. We decided that we didn't want the blue accent, that it would be better to stay faithful to the white and gray colors of like the console itself. With the colors in mind, we did another thumbnail. So these thumbnails, they can be messy. The anatomy has to be somewhat accurate so it looks like kind of normal, but the coloring and everything, as you can see, the line art is so sketchy and undefined, but we used the knowledge of the colors and the features that we liked from the line art, put it all together and made a thumbnail draft of our character with all the things that we want to include, all our new ideas. And I think this one just has more of like a color harmony to it, and we really did work hard on creating that. I think that the main strength of thumbnailing is better connecting the coloring and lining process, so they can be more responsive to each other in creating a cool design. Now that I've successfully used thumbnailing, I can use our next two tips to create the right amount of contrast in our design. Before we move on, I'd like to quickly talk about today's sponsor. Say you design all these amazing characters and you want to put them in a portfolio online to show them off. Squarespace.com offers website hosting with easy to use website templates and design tools. The platform really lends itself to customization with custom CSS, so I can add my favorite font. Squarespace also has a variety of other features such as support for online payments and storefronts where you can sell your art goods. Check out squarespace.com for a free trial and use squarespace.com/Zeppin to save 10% off a website or domain. Balancing details is more important in the sketching phase, so because that comes first, here it is. Details are a super important part of character designing. It creates visual interest. A little, ooh, what's that? There can be too much of a good thing though. If everything is detailed, viewers won't know where to look and what to appreciate most. So it's super important to have details in some areas of the design while leaving some areas unassuming. This is definitely one of those more subjective tips, as I've seen super maximalistic designs that rock. But these are a lot harder to get right because most of the time, you just don't know where to be looking, and there's so many cool and amazing features that you just don't have all the RAM to process it. Another thing is that details might not be what you originally think they are. Above all, they're relative. To a design with incredibly simple, flat, monotonous colors and standard issue line art, a detail could be a plaid skirt. Or to a design with a lot of stuff going on with the hair and clothes, the detail could be the fine rendering in the eyes. The main thing about balancing details is not to question if you have too much or too little, but more to question if you have a range, and if that range is drawing attention to the parts of the character that you actually want it to. For example, on this design, I wanted attention to be drawn to the jacket and the bag because it contains a lot of motifs about the character design and how it connects to its purpose. But there is of course another way to create contrast and influence where your character is looking in your design, and here it is. Values. Not to go all art teacher schmuck on you, but damn, they were kinda onto something banging on about these values thingies. You see, behind the glitz and glamour of your colored piece, there is something called value. It is the lightness and darkness of the colors that you use in an artwork, and it is also super important in character design. You want to make sure that each part of your character design is distinguishable in its values. It is also super useful in creating contrast and drawing your attention to certain parts of the character. In this thumbnail, I use value in a really effective way. Honestly, not bad. So the jacket color and the shirt are very similar in value, but the pants, the legs, the shoes, the hat and the hair, that one's really good to see that the hat is very much in contrast to the hair and the face, so it kind of draws attention to that because there's like so much contrast happening there. But I think that maybe we could change up the color of the shirt just so it looks like a little bit different. The color is still white, the color is still under that umbrella of white, but we want to think about the different types of white that we can use to achieve like our goals of the different values. Let's take a look at this version. So now looking at this new version of the design, you can see that there's like a little bit more of a contrast between the jacket and the shirt. So not much, not too much that it's very dramatic, but just a little bit to distinguish those features. So maybe when we have less bold of a line art color, you can still tell that those are different parts of the character. As a general rule of thumb, don't have two elements next to each other that have similar values. Try changing the color slightly by making it darker or brighter to differentiate these pieces and let them shine on their own. Every piece of your beautiful character design deserves its time in the spotlight, but through using values effectively, the visual hierarchy can make a little more sense. There is honestly so much more I could go on about when it comes to character designs because I love it. And each of these things could have a video of their own very easily. But here's the overview and the main things that I keep in mind during my process. If you like the video, please tell the YouTube and also subscribe, maybe. I'm trying to get as close to 100k by the end of the year, so if you could help me out, thank you so much to all my narps, germs, and grubs who support this channel, and I hope to see you returning in the next one. Peace. There was this one time I brought it to the beach because I thought that was a good idea somehow, and it got so much sand in it for like the 5-6 years that I played this console. It had sand. Like you'd shake it and sand would like fall out. Like I do not know what that looked like on the inside, but it was like,
You
why
got
did
the
I do
cursed
that?
raw DS.